And now, if you're just watching this video, I'm rejoined by Kevin Benedict, enterprise mobility expert and, dare I say, guru. Kevin, if that doesn't bother you too much, that guru phrase you have to be a little
I
careful with.
just came from a trip to India where guru has positive connotation. Let's go
Oh,
with that.
nice. All right. Well, that's good then. It's maybe we should move on to Ninja anyway, because I think that's sort of the latest and greatest.
I
But
was just
anyhow,
in Japan too, so we could go with that.
we could go with Ninja. All right, cool. I'm getting some great '80s movies images in my mind while we're speaking, so that's nice. But anyhow, on topic here, we kind of laid out a bunch of the enterprise mobility trends that you're seeing. I wanted to dig in a little further into some where do we go from here questions. I wanted to go back into this question of cost of ownership because you talked previously about this challenge where companies are trying to move beyond, okay, we built an app, we had some success with that app perhaps, but maybe a little daunting from a cost perspective. So even though a lot of these mobile trends are undeniable, and when you see statistics, you see the level of investment coming in the mobile space. Computer economics, my colleague Frank Scavo just did a survey that showed a lot of aggressive spending in mobile. But at the same time, there's these lingering concerns around return on investment, and I think there's a growing sense that just because you give your users access to something on an iPhone or an Android or whatever doesn't mean you have a win necessarily, right? So aren't there some hard questions being asked right now about how do we get there?
Well, yeah, I recently spoke to the CIO team of a Fortune 100 company, and they gave me a metric that was interesting. They said for every mobile app, they're going to have a full-time IT person assigned to that app. So if you think you're going to have 100 apps come out, and you use that metric, that's 100 new FTEs to support those applications. And that starts to get obnoxious and expensive. And you
Right.
don't want, and so the first question from an IT perspective is, I don't want to build those 100 apps in 100 different ways. I don't want to use 100 different tools that, every developer has their favorite tool, and I don't want to just open it up so everybody can build an app any way they want. I don't want my APIs to be different for every app so that, I never know how it's integrated with the back end. And if I upgrade a mobile app, I don't know actually what's going to be impacted and what processes are going to be impacted. Now you quickly come to the conclusion in IT, you've got to rein in this chaos and you've really got to standardize those processes unless you just won't get the ROI that you've hoped for. So you start looking at it and saying, guys, we need to make sure that we understand why we're using a particular development tool for mobile apps. Let's see if we can use that for all of them or as many as possible. That will reduce our cost around training people and certifying them on that particular application. Just will gain experience on it. That will scale and will benefit through the basically economy of scale, right? So every time you make an app, it's faster and faster for the next app because of the experience you've gained. Let's make sure we have standardized ways of testing. Are we using automated testing platforms or services out there to be able to do this so we have a process that's almost automatic? Here's a new app. Here's what we do to test it. So you start standardizing and minimizing the variables, standardizing on as few components as possible. That reduces training, that reduces the errors you're going to have when you always experience when you're learning something new, and really start streamlining that process. And that's really where everyone wants to get. And of course, John, one of the struggles with that is a lot of mobile apps are built by third parties or contractors. But you as an IT organization, you need to be applying or insisting that those contractors and developers follow your policies and standards. Find somebody that already knows your chosen software development environment, that knows your chosen platform and mobile middleware and your security environment and your testing environment. Find them. I mean, you need to dictate as an IT organization that you need help, but you need help in your areas. don't open up for free reign, because as you know, those contractors will come and go and you'll be left to support it, and the total cost of ownership will go through the roof if you don't stay on top of that.
Yeah, and let me add another couple logs to the fire from your own website. You published a couple recent podcasts that noted 88% of enterprises have mobile deployments, but only 8% of mobile service directors know how their deployments are performing. And then 95% of companies acknowledge they have problems with their mobile deployments, but most lack the insight and often the resources necessary to address them effectively. Sounds like some analytics problems as well, Kevin.
Yeah, there's what's interesting here is that you have some core recognized software vendor categories, and it could be like mobile security, UX, and mobile app development. Then you have mobile middleware, but there's these gaps in between those major categories that companies that do application lifecycle management take care of, and we don't always think about those. But a lot of those will say, you know what, we're going to have you build into your app up front some code that lets us really look at usability and lets us really look at the metrics on how apps use, the speed for loading things, the pages used, problems. We'll log all the problems, and we do that by building in some code and scripts in the original development. And yeah, there's vendors out there. There's Aperion, and then there's testing companies like Perfecta Mobile, and there's other companies like Beta-M Solutions. All these guys don't fit naturally in the categories we seem to recognize up front, but they provide these lifecycle tools that really allow you to look at the usability of your app once you've deployed it.
So where do you think we're going from here, Kevin? I mean, there's been one of the things I noticed is that from an enterprise mobility standpoint, a lot of the most exciting and interesting things weren't even sort of what you would think of as like the human mobile component as much as like things like sensor data, the Internet of Things. In Barcelona, I did a podcast with Thin Film where they have printable smart codes on bottles that essentially allow a different kind of relationship with the consumer because they have an understanding of whether the consumer's opened the bottle or not, which is a whole different way of looking at like mobile intelligence. It seems like there's really been changes in, okay, so right now you're talking about TCO, which is really important, but there's also a business model transformation thing I'm seeing where it's no longer just let's give our field service employees access to our system on their app. Now it's about whole new use cases that involve a whole different way of approaching the market. Philips with their smart lights was another one that I did in Barcelona where now lighting takes on an intelligent quality and almost becomes a data platform for new services. This is exciting, but also it makes your head spin a little too.
Yeah, John, I think right now, this is my personal opinion, you're seeing a lot of trial and error in R&D that's being floated around to see what sticks. And I think a lot of the stuff you're seeing displayed at places like Mobile World Congress, I mean, nobody has any real misguided hope that they're going to make a fortune on it, but they're throwing out just about every kind of idea they have right now to see which one actually has legs. And there's a lot of that going out there. They're treating these big conferences as R&D environments. What do the customers say? What do they like? Because right now, there's some very powerful ROIs to be had in some industrial use cases. People are still trying to find, what's the real story? What's the real compelling experience for consumers? Because even if you look at, home automation systems, which I think personally is very cool, the adoption rate's very low on that kind of stuff yet. So, but the idea behind it is absolutely driving the future, which is the world is going to be covered by more and more sensors. Sensors, I describe that as being able to sense things beyond your physical senses. So you can only reach this far with your hand, but sensors allow you to see and feel what's going on the other side of the world. Now that's really important to companies with multinational organizations and manufacturing plants all over. I think of one, just Unilever has over 600 food processing plants around the world. Can you imagine having basically a command and control center in one location that's reviewing the performance and the behaviors and the maintenance of equipment in 600 plants, all from one command and control through the use of sensors? So you can see just the huge compelling opportunities that sensors can be providing data that can provide optimization in planning and optimizing workforce and optimizing scheduling. All of that kind of stuff is brilliant. So you have those industrial use cases, and they've been out there actually for decades. They just didn't have the flashy buzzwords. But now we're moving into the consumer space saying, are there other opportunities around the house, around cars? Yes. The automobile is a compelling case, in my opinion. But all the other areas that we're seeing, all those fun gadgets, they're still testing to see which one's going to stick, John.
Right. Then there's a pretty massive debate going on around, is the future, of these app development, is it really more of an HTML5/web future, or are we still going to have a proliferation of apps? And if so, if you're developing apps and you're trying to develop for specific devices, now you're running into TCO problems again, where, it's one thing to roll out one app across devices, it's another thing to have to customize an iPhone, Windows, and Android version of that same app. Where are you on this whole notion of the future of apps and the future of development?
Yeah, so in my opinion, you have two big use cases. Where your brand is associated with an app, and that app is out there for your customer base and prospects in the consumer market, you need to use whatever clever advantage you can to have the best brand experience and user experience. So, so you're going to see people using native, and I don't see any end to that. They'll be using native for iOS, native for Android, all that, because they think they want that extra 10, 20% of functionality they can get in those environments, because they really believe that that makes all the difference when it comes to brand experience, and they're willing to spend and have a higher total cost of ownership around those kinds of solutions. Now, looking at the productive apps, or the productivity apps, I guess you call it, I call them utility apps even. It's all the things like internal apps you want your employees to have so they can take care of their payroll information, they can take care of their HR kinds of stuff, their investment and retirement programs.
Yeah.
Anything that they're going to use internally there, I think for most of that, the HTML5 gives all and more than they need. And the total cost of ownership will be quite a bit less, because you build once and you can support tablets, you can support laptops, you can support all the different platforms within the mobile device space.
But even so, even if you go HTML5, which does make sense, and I get your point. If I'm asking you to fill out expense reports, I might not need to have all the bells and whistles of a Siri-based environment for the iPhone or whatever. But at the same time, there is a growing understanding, I think, that mobile development is different than kind of porting over your enterprise solutions. So, are you seeing companies develop more intelligence about how they roll out apps? Because if you roll out a crappy mobile app where you have to go through the same amount of transaction screens as you do for when you're sitting at your desk, it's just not going to fly. Users aren't going to use it.
Well, this is almost back to the whole what we're learning around gamification, what we're learning around the social environment online too, social media, where you have the ability to do thumbs up, thumbs down, rate different applications. I mean, most of the big companies that I know that are developing all these apps internally, they're allowing for internal rating systems. So you can see the internal, are the employees giving it 1 star out of 5, and why, and here's their comments, and you're transparent with those. So your teams know that they're going to be graded and rated on those things, so it's really important to do the job right. So you see a lot of that. That's really going to hold IT organizations accountable for that, and I think it's going to make a better product.
So I know that in addition to all the the massive volume of videos and newsletters that you're able to crank out. You're also doing more significant research projects for this year. So as we wrap up our shoot, what kinds of research are you excited about, and what are you going to be doing there?
Yeah, there's actually two areas. One's called real-time mobile infrastructure. You know, what we're learning is that creating the world's coolest mobile app isn't going to do you any good if your infrastructure can't support real-time interactions with your ERPs and other business solutions and business processes on the back end. So mobile applications are driving this digital transformation back into the enterprise, saying, look, in order to be competitive, and because more and more of our business is being transacted through our mobile applications, we have to support a real-time mobile environment and real-time mobile interactions with our customers, and that requires a lot of changes in the back end. So that's fascinating to see how much has to be transformed within our legacy IT environment to actually support this new world of mobility. So that's one area I'm researching. My big project I'm working on right now, John, is on mobile consumer behavior. And that's considering time that you're doing things, the location you're doing things, the particular activities you're engaged in when you're using your mobile applications, and then look at the patterns. So those patterns reflect that after every soccer game you take the soccer team to pizza. Well, if you've done that 5 times in a row, well, that's a pattern. So perhaps it's time to offer you a pizza, or bring the pizza to the soccer field next time to ensure you get the business as a pizza organization or a pizza vendor, because you know that there's a pattern here, and rather than roll the dice, the same soccer team is going to come to your facility. You know where they're at, let's go to them. So you're going to see this location aware and location context. What time of the day are they doing particular things? Are they shopping? Are they doing research? Are they buying? What times of the week, month, year, what holidays, what are they doing that you can better support based on the data gathered from sensors, from mobile applications, from swipes, clicks, and preferences? So that mobile consumer behavior is very important, not only for vendors, but for you as the user, because if once you've chosen a preferred vendor, you want that vendor to give you more and more personal service that's different from somebody else. Because somebody that doesn't do business with that preferred vendor, you want to be treated at a gold or a diamond level by that customer. That means you're willing to share some more personal information about your likes and preferences so that you get that service and convenience that you so desire. And so there's this transaction. You treat me nicer if I give you more information, and I'll give you more business if you treat me nicer. So you see this kind of interaction, and so I'm spending a lot of time this year really understanding that, John.
That's interesting, because through your story there, you kind of picked out sort of the convergence of things like personalization, geolocational issues, analytics, maybe even tackling a few privacy concerns along the way. That's an interesting collection of use cases that kind of come together, I guess.
Oh yeah, you know, we call that, of course, digital transformation. And we have this at Cognizant in our Center for the Future Work. We talk a lot about the concept of code halos. All of us have a halo around our head that's really all the data about us: our clicks, our swipes, our likes, our dislikes, our transaction histories, our shopping histories, our location information, all of this information that floats out there around us. And we want to keep some of that private, especially from vendors we don't like or don't want to do business with. But those vendors that we want to enhance a relationship with, we want them to have more and more of our personal code so they can treat us different and better.
Yep, that makes sense. Kevin, before we wrap, do you have a quick opinion on the latest mobile video phenomenon? We had Meerkat capturing a lot of viral attention of late for live streaming video, and now Twitter has now released its own service, Periscope, and there's a lot of chatter right now that maybe live stream video is finally arrived. Have we reached that yet, or are we still butting up against broadband limitations and everything else?
Well, I'm still looking for a use case. Those kind of things like Snapchat and as you call it, Meerkat. I downloaded Meerkat last 2 weeks ago for the first time. I did my first little test video on Meerkat the other week. So they're fun from an enterprise level, the kind of area I focus on. I don't really know how I could use it. I think it's fun for social environments and just playing or sharing information with your family and friends. Not sure yet if there's an industrial enterprise use for that. So I'm not gonna jump on the bandwagon yet, but it's interesting. I'm testing it.
I could see you streaming live access to like a confidential meeting. That would get a lot of eyeballs. A confidential briefing, NDA session.
Yeah, don't you think we should go in and have a SAP pricing discussion with Meerkat on?
That sounds really good, man. I think that would go over like gangbusters. It is kind of interesting. I can think of some situations where it might be nice to live stream, but I think again you run into, from an enterprise level, you run into the challenges of investment and platform. And Kevin, we haven't conquered all these issues. I mean, you look back to the Mobile World Congress, a show dedicated to mobility, and look at all the Wi-Fi problems they continue to have. And look, I completely understand. It's a massive show, but it does show you that there are still issues. We talk about universal connectivity like it's a no-brainer, but it's still not.
Yeah, I mean, if we use the concept of horizon, we like to spend a lot of time, especially guys like you and me, John, focus on the horizon, all the cool new stuff. But there's not always a lot of use cases or ROIs for that new stuff, and a lot of it will die before it ever becomes core functionality. But it's fun to look at it because those are ideas that spawn new ideas and new innovations and new creations over time and drive us forward to keep thinking and being creative and looking for new competitive advantages. But we recognize that a lot of these things will never be core functionality a decade from now, but they're necessary to get us to those next levels of innovation.
Well, I think that's a good note to end on, Kevin. Thanks for sharing all that on the directions. That's going to be a great wrap for me on the event, so I appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, John, for having me.
And I like the bookshelf layout, too. That's excellent, man. Makes you want to grab a title right off your shelf and dig in.
Yeah, it's just wallpaper.
It's just wallpaper, right? Not actually real-time books, right? You're all Kindle now, I would think. Hey, we'll talk to you soon, Kevin. Thanks. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Perfect, John.